You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and back again is a great friend of the network as a whole, Todd Hassenfelt. I've had him on a ton of times, and it's just an all-around great resource on the brand side and is just open to share a ton across the board. And so a lot of things to cover today, and a lot of that is going to be around content as a whole. It just, in my conversation, content keeps coming up over and over again, and on two things: the expense, how hard it is to update, how much it costs, and then the actual uploading it to any sites that you're going to use. Then does it work or not, and how do you test and learn on it? And so anyways, we'll get to all of that stuff. But Todd, I'll kick it over to you. If you want to do a brief intro on yourself and the company, that'd be cool. I mean, usually there's a little blurb in there, and then we'll jump into it. Sound good?
Yeah, no, Aaron, thank you, and love this podcast. Thank you for all the great guests you've had on here and having me on again. Really appreciate everything you do for the whole, really business community as a whole. So I'm Todd Hassenfelt. I am Senior Director of Global Digital Commerce for Strategy and Execution at Colgate-Palmolive. So I'm part of the Global Digital Organization. Brigitte King is our Chief Digital Officer, and then our Vice President of Digital Commerce is Jamie Schwab. I'm just really lucky. You probably know Colgate for the Colgate toothpaste and oral care products. We also have personal care products, home care, three great, skin health brands, as well as our, very popular, Hill's pet food, for dogs and cats. So a really great company of talented people. I get to work with so many of them and try to figure out, as we all are, how do we navigate in this blurred lines environment? How do we make sure that we're connecting and converting our consumers, partnering with our retailers, and really figuring out how to be effective and efficient?
Yeah, awesome. I mean, one of the cool things is, a larger organization, kind of a legacy. A lot of times they're slow to move, but I mean, what you've built and the leadership team that you have that's in place there is just open to trying a lot of new things. And a lot of those we get to pick apart. And so it's really great to have you sitting on the forefront of what's happening across digital. Let's jump into a little bit on the content side and some of the cool stuff that's going on. There's a lot of buzz around, what's going on with Ask Profitero. Should probably just give Mike Black a ping and just say, hey, you want to jump on? We haven't chatted in a while. I'd love to have you on and walk through it. But I don't know if you can talk a little bit about that. I'm assuming you can. I mean, there's a lot of publications that went everywhere, but would love to hear and kind of walk through like the changes that are going to take place that you see potentially taking place over the next year or so, because content, it's huge and it's top of mind for everybody. And it's, again, we did a podcast a little while back to the basics. And one of the main thing was getting your content right. You can ramp up all the paid media you want. Your content isn't up to snuff, then it's not going to work out. But anyways, we'd love to hear your thoughts there, and we can just kind of riff. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great. Excited for this. So let's level set with, what is Ask Profitero? And I'll say, my journey with it goes back to mid-June, where Profitero had an event for many of their clients and brands in the CPG community. And there was a lot of topics, but one of them was their roadmap. And, a surprise to all the non-Profitero people there was all of a sudden a demonstration of a ChatGPT-like tool called Ask Profitero, where they had, pre-scripted prompts, and it was giving answers based on, dummy data from a digital shelf perspective. So fast forward now, to right now here, mid-August, and we, Colgate-Palmolive, to your point of being one that, despite we've been around for 217 years, but the company is really committed to, how do we test and learn? How do we get better in digital? And so we are going to be one of the closed beta partners for Ask Profitero. What that's going to look like.
It's really neat, really quick, because I also think that you will use it. I mean, I'm sure there's people that are in this closed beta but you're going to outpace everybody because of the culture internally. And so that's one of the things I just want to, remind people is that internal culture of the digital department and the drive to trial and error and being okay with mistakes and failures. It's what, I talk 20, 30 brands a week. And that is the main difference between those who are accelerating, those who are just kind of moving along slowly, is the willingness to try new things, to experiment with them, and you want to do it methodically and you want to do it with controlled variables, but you want to do it as fast as you can. I was just thinking about that as you were talking, like all these tools are available. Few people are actually executing and using them and trying to use them to the fullest potential. So.
No, I appreciate it. It's a mutual, we want to be good partners, and we have a history of Profitero, being our digital shelf analytics partner for so many of our markets. And that trust that has been built up, from all the things they've done just with digital shelf and how we built, scorecards and workshops and, office hours for all of our great teams across the globe to really embed the digital shelf piece. So now what this Ask Profitero will be is taking that same data that we have from our digital shelf analytics with Profitero, use the trust, and you're right, like Mike Black is awesome all over LinkedIn, providing the industry so many, stats and nuggets and perspectives, right? And Sarah Hofstetter, what she does with Rachel Tipograph and Micmac for the Brave Commerce piece. So take all of this and now roll it into a closed beta, private generative AI-like tool. And there's going to be two parts of it. One is going to be looking at our digital shelf data from KPIs like availability, retailer search, ratings and reviews, and pricing and promotion. So that's going to be the analytics portion. So yes, it is, the limitations will be the creativity of our prompts, right? How we look at things, whether it's by retailer, whether it's by time frame, different SKUs. So really exciting to look at that part of it. And then the second part, I didn't mention content like you just did. There's a whole separate tool with Ask Profitero that is all content. Now, for the test space, that's going to be just written content. And I don't say that lightly because there's a lot with titles, bullet points, and descriptions. So there won't be images. So nothing there yet. But we could really look at, in a smaller scale with, select retailers and product groups. Okay, how could we optimize our content? What is working? What is not? And now, to your point, it's like iteration. Like, how do you just keep getting different iterations? So you prompt, you learn, you visualize it. There's a way of really taking the data and now putting it into a chart or a different kind of visualization where you could present it to senior leadership for resource allocation. It's a beta test, right? It's a closed beta test. So, and we haven't put a prompt in yet. Like I said, we're starting end of this month. It's going to be with our incredibly talented Colgate US team will be the specific market that we're looking at there. But I think the potential here is not only to take, let's call practitioners or hands-on keyboard people that are in the digital shelf, space. It should make them faster and more effective with what they know already. But now, can this also, digital shelf has already been a bridge. Do we just extend that bridge out more to maybe more groups? If it's easier, just, hey, I have some questions. Can you prompt it, or can I get access and try this out? Now you could bring in, brand marketers, innovation, different pieces, like all these different KPIs. It's really exciting to see. Now we know it's a closed beta, so we're going to be a good partner and say, hey, here's what's working. Here's what's opportunity. Here's our wish list. But I think when you combine digital shelf, generative AI, and the ability to collaborate, those are really exciting for us at Colgate-Palmolive.
In the idea that you can just prompt different things, right? Because you think about, we'll go way back in the day, 5 years ago, right? So eons ago, in digital age, if you wanted an answer to a different question, you had to go back to whoever the provider was. Maybe it's Profitero. Way back in the day, for me, it was Clavis before they got rolled into Essential. You had to go back to the team and say, hey, no, I needed to answer this question for me. Hey, I'd like to know if it could do this, or I'd like to know how many items show up when I do this, right? It's flagging you when things are going on. We're just talking about prompts. Like you're saying, how many items are good? Do I have the potential to go out of stock for in the next week? Well, I don't want to know for the next week. I want to know it for the next month. Okay, there's the next month. I don't want to know for the next month. I want to know for the next 23 and a half days. You can literally just prompt it however you want. And as long as the data is in there, it's going to be able to crunch it and kick it back out. What are my highest performing SKUs? What are my lowest performing SKUs? And you can follow it in real time. Are there any correlations between out of stock and best correlate? You can ask. I mean, that's what I'm hearing, as you're saying, is like, I totally agree. It's going to go to a whole different level. And now, rather than like an executive team, they come back and they'd ask, well, what about XYZ? Hey, let me get back to you.
Yes.
I'm not going to have to get back to them. Here's my login. Ask it whatever question you want.
Yeah, I think, prompts, it goes on both ends. I think, how we're looking at it is there will be a group that says, I really haven't dove into this. Well, just Gen AI in general, right? Even the public version of ChatGPT. And I don't know how to prompt. Great. Here's some suggestions, right? But then there's the other end that either you're a practitioner, you have been using it, or you just are the person who gets something to build a piece of furniture. You don't even look at the instructions. You just go, right? And that's great too. So yes, then you go and try it out, and we'll balance the two groups. So I think, yes, but it's all about learning together, right? So how do we track, like, okay, what are we learning from it? What prompts work better than others, and we can share that information. I think then, when you look at, what comes out of it, I mean, think about from a digital shelf perspective, how much data is coming in daily. Multiply the number of SKUs you have by all your retailers times all those KPIs, and think about the volume. And so even before generative AI and ChatGPT, it's challenging to create a dashboard, and that's why we're so happy, with Profitero and the support they've given us. But yes, now to your point, maybe you don't have to be a Power BI whiz or an Excel whiz or whatever, Google Sheets whiz, whatever it may be. It's a prompt. What questions do you want answered? And let's test, right? And again, this is all potential at this point, but I think, Profitero has been great to say, give us the wish list. Like, if it's not doing something you want, like, let us know. This is why it's a closed beta.
It's going to be awesome. I'm just thinking about if you can tie it into generative AI platforms. I mean, maybe where it's giving you a readout on what's performing and what's not performing. And in the past, you had to do a photo shoot, or you have to shoot it over to somebody who knows Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever it is, have them cut, trim out. I'm just thinking back to all these. You literally had to have somebody do it. Or this just says, hey, take this base image, lighten it by 3 shades of blue, and re-upload it. And I mean, in your case, it's got to go to regulatory or something like that.
Or yeah, there's always close with legal and IT and brand teams, et cetera. And remember now, Ask Profitero won't be the image part of it yet, right? But you could take insights from that and change it.
Exactly.
And I think, yeah.
But you could have two then as a company,
Yes.
and then you have the generative AI tool that you exactly are you're connecting the two. And yes, in between sits the brand marketing team, and on the outside before it gets published is regulatory. But that would be, I mean, we're at the forefront of just how fast this has changed over the past year.
Yeah. And think content, or potentially even from search, or both paid and organic, right? You could get a better idea to narrow down where are the opportunities, where am I strong? And maybe I can pull some resources off of those SKUs or that category. But where do I have opportunity? So I think, the teams have done a great job of training on the Profitero tool, of embedding the digital shelf scorecard. Now it gets even deeper, where it's like, I can pinpoint which SKU is it? Which category is it that I need to really prioritize? Because we're all, right? Every company's busy. There's so much on the plate. Prioritization is such a key thing. I think this is, if anything, generally, it's the ability to get to the right answer faster.
Yes. Through testing and learning.
Yes. Right. So, no, I mean, excited, thankful, like you said at the beginning, that Colgate-Palmolive has this type of mentality to test with this. And of course, we have gone through the appropriate legal and security checks, because it's Gen AI, and making sure, everyone is aligned. Profitero has been a great partner from Digital Shelf. So, yeah, I mean, we're making sure that we're being smart about this and responsible, because with everything that has a reward, there's potential risk, but we are balancing it out and excited to be part of this, closed beta test. And then think, so the PDP content, right? And I mean, I don't know if you want to talk, kind of in store, so like, and you think digital shelf,
Everything.
that's like quantitative, right? We could go down a path of like, well, now how do you look at, not necessarily with Ask Profitero, but what about qualitative? Like, you got your content in place, and there's, that's even a fun one. If you think about like points of failure, I think you probably know that from your science days. Like, where's the point of failure here from all the startups you talk to? But I think there's the same thing with PDP content. There's like, well, one, do I have the content? Okay, that's a whole bigger thing. You have a whole separate line, discussion there. But even if you do have the PDP content, all right, well, now is it correct? Is it in your PIMR or is it, is it sitting in someone's file folder on their computer? If it is in the PIMR, is it labeled and tagged correctly? Maybe not. Okay, now that's correct. Has it been, successfully uploaded to the retailer? Yes or no? And then, great, we've done all these steps. We have content. We have it in our PIMR. We have it tagged correctly. It's been uploaded to the retailer. Well, is it still there, right? Because things change. Whether it's a UPC, you change the title and they got dropped off, or the algorithm changed, whatever changed, right? But that's just the simple version of a very complicated process. But I think when you think about generative AI potential, content creation, and then the importance of, where in-store retail media is and how PDPs are going to be such a big part of the in-store experience, even more than just your cell phone now, all those points of failure, you're never going to get it perfect. It's really hard. But how do you get better? Because the volume and speed of this is not slowing down or getting less. And that is cross-functional. All those points of failure, and there's more, right? And we could go deeper in all this, because even when you look at content creation, you could go down a path of, well, new product, like existing product, but I changed the packaging. I'm looking at data now, maybe from Ask Profitero from a keyword perspective, so I got to change the content. Or, man, I forgot. We have one UPC with 5 pieces of five different main images in there. I'm new to the company. Which one's the right one, right? So how are you purging the old content too? Like it all sounds like real quick going through these in 2 minutes, but this ways of working with PDP content and content in general, such an opportunity across the board.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, people just want to know that they're using, because of all the assets out there, that they're using the right stuff with everything that's available to them. And that's step one, just baseline. Do I have the right kind of do I have it? Is it in the right spot? Did it get uploaded? Is it good? Period. And then the next one we go to is, okay, we've got that baseline, testing and learning what's working, what's not working, and giving me a flag of when, hey, it's not working. Right. Because that's where, I think back way to my Perigo days, where we just basically had once a quarter, at any point in time, a quarter of the catalog was being updated. Why? Because we're giving it a try, and we test and learn, and we'd learn half the stuff we touched was bad and half the stuff we touched was really good, but we didn't really know as we went along. In this case, is guiding you on what needs to be touched and what doesn't, right? Well, rather than just before, it was just blanket. Hey, we're supposed to refresh content. Let's do it once a quarter. I mean, it's a
heavy lift. Or once a year sometimes, right? Like, Prime Day's coming. Probably should look at that Amazon content. Well, we should look at it more than that. Right? It should really be as consumers and competition trends evolve, right? So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
I'm also looking at when we think about content, I also think about ratings and reviews, and using, I did a podcast with Gautam over at Yogi.
Yeah.
Where they're ingesting that level of ratings and reviews and both yours and your competitions to then create new content that addresses your highlights and their competition's lowlights, so that you can do a couple things. One is update your content in PDP and what you're highlighting. And the other one is influence product design.
Yes.
The next thing around.
Yes.
And if this platform can also ingest data like that, it's going to be fantastic.
Especially what Yogi could do, right? And he's great. Like the sentiment of it, right? And the themes. Now, okay, if you're lucky enough to have a product with 10,000 reviews, good luck doing that manually, trying to figure out the sentiment, right?
But yeah, Amazon's doing that with their the reviews and aggregating and highlighting, the points.
I'm very curious. Like, we'll all have to try and figure this out. Okay, are they including outliers? Are they including negative? A lot of negative review. What is the ratio? But the potential of that to be so influential, right? It used to be, well, what are the top 6 or 7 reviews on the page without someone having to click more, or even just seeing the star rating? And I gotta give credit to one of my colleagues, Jim Boyle. He made me aware of something the other day of just seeing there's now a % of reviews that are 4+ on Amazon. If you look like right underneath the product title, they've adapted, and instead of just showing you kind of the graph of the 5 stars, it will give you the exact number. But now it's like, what % are 4+? That's really helpful, right? Assuming that you have good rating. So yeah, I mean, I give Jim credit on that one, but all these factors, the Gen AI summaries, more detail and a quick look. Hopefully you've been listening to the consumer in the past and addressing things so that there's a higher % of positive reviews coming in, right? Like your consumer affairs team, when you used to be able to reply to reviews, was doing so in an appropriate way and helping out the consumer. Because it's really coming full circle now. And even what Amazon has done, I'm curious also. Well, now how does this impact glance views? And you combine that with what they're testing with some of those images where you can flick through, in essence, thumb through the thumbnail pictures without actually going to the page.
Yeah.
Like between those two, these things, between the ratings and reviews of that, is that a glance view on the thumbing of the thumbnails or not? And then if I just look at that, or I just look at the rating without actually clicking in the PDP, does that count for attribution on retail for the search, for the sponsored product? Like, I mean, all these questions I think we're all going to try and figure out, but it changes the consumer experience. And so how are the metrics going to change or not? Even think about Amazon Inspire, right? Small thing right now, but that little, if you have on the bottom of your Amazon app, if you have the light bulb, check it out. It's really interesting. And just from a CX and functionality piece, if you're going through and it's like a TikTok or Instagram feed in essence, quick videos with products, I don't know if influencer is the right term, but influencer like. But you can look through the PDP or just the images without going to it, or you can say see full details. But that kind of thing, like the mechanics of it are really interesting, even if there's not a lot of traffic yet. And I'm not saying it's going to be like a revenue driver yet, but I will say it's really good for product discovery. I could personally attest to that. And finding things, but I think the mechanics are something to watch for as we look at all social commerce. And it comes down to, is your content good? Okay, great. The video got you. Now you're thumbing through the thumbnail pictures. What do you have? Are you going to convert, or are you going to confuse them and they're going to go to the next one?
Yeah, it'll be interesting with Inspire. I don't think enough people know about it, right?
No. And there's not a social element to it really, right? Like I can't share it, so like, there's definitely opportunities yet, but I would definitely, keep an eye on it.
You'll know if it quietly goes away. Amazon liked it, and they're just revamping it, and then they'll come back with a whole new social media platform, right? Like, right. I mean, that's where some of the biggest, I don't know if you know the team over at Product Wind, they're doing some great stuff. And they're using, basically micro influencers to drive traffic off Amazon on Amazon for those new item launches where Amazon orders 3, right? And, you're always out of stock and you can't drive any traffic. But that's how they're doing it, is through social. I mean, maybe they come back out with their own social channel. Who knows? Where it's all product related, almost like QVC, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the content probably has to get better, to a degree, but I wouldn't say it's bad. It's just, like, does it get more engaging? What's interesting, there are some direct from TikTok, right? The TikTok logo is on there, on Inspire. So I'm always curious on that. But to your point, like, is it their own? Or all speculation here, but there's enough, questions and speculation on LinkedIn. Or do they go acquire an existing one and say, hey, we got the model here. This is really easy for the consumer to navigate in a shopping app with a social experience. I mean, because it was interesting just using it personally, right? So personal anecdote, but using Inspire, if I do click and thumb through something to look, it comes up. I mean, it's almost immediate now, where it's like continue shopping when I go back to the regular app. So kind of like an automatic retarget. But let's say I thumb through something and I don't like it. I go right back to the scroll then and keep going through the feed, right? So it is, like we always talk about, seamless or frictionless. That part, that's why I'm saying, like, the fundamentals are kind of there. So yeah, do they look at it that way and say, well, we have figured out how to truly navigate between shopping and scrolling, in essence, product discovery and ability to buy easily, quickly. I don't know. That I think there's potential.
Right. And it's just another content creative.
Well, and yeah, we kind of tease it, but the in-store piece of content now, right? So the challenge, like you were mentioning, like quarterly or annually with PDP content, well, why should we allocate resources if you're a company, let's say, and some maybe not as close to it? Why should we allocate resources to all these updates to PDPs? It's such a small percent of our business, right? Now, we know, like, that's missing the fact of digitally influenced sales and the growth and everything, but that is still out there holistically, right? I'm talking industry, brand agnostic here, just from an industry perspective. But now you see, Andrew Lipsome, who I know has been a guest on here in the past, just did an insider intelligence report on the digitization of the store. It's incredible, and it has a lot of stats on, how brands are looking at this, how retailers are looking at it, how consumers are looking at it. And the balance, again, kind of risk and reward here. How many more screens are either going to be repurposed for ads or retail media, right? As retailers have blown that up in the last 2 years. But yet, how do you make sure it's not invasive or a bad experience? So what's that right balance? But you think about it, whether it's cooler screens, whether it's end caps with half product, half screen, your in-store app on your phone, your smart cart, the aisle at the end, all these opportunities for screens, where are they most likely, as this gets bigger, going to grab the content from, especially if they need it quickly from the retailer? They're going to go right to your PDP. And it's probably why, don't know, speculation here, but you have some retailers, I think, Target was one of the first, Walmart's doing it, but they're saying, hey, brands, we're scoring your content on our site, right? We're scoring you. Yeah, here's your content score. And is that part of it? Is that one of the reasons? Because it's going to become a bigger part of the in-store experience. And now, for the same people that may say, well, we don't have to update PDPs because it's just online. When they start seeing them in stores, if it's not at the quality you would want for an in-store ad, an in-store experience, I think it's really going to accelerate the conversations if they're not happening already in people's organizations. So get ready for that, right? How much more scrutiny do you look at a PDP if it's inside your favorite retailer?
Yeah, I mean, I almost got to have a Jay back from Visit, because what they're doing is really cool, and a lot of times the score that you get, you're like, wait, how did I get this score? Right. And it's different from retailer to retailer. I mean, if you can come back with actually, no, I've got a 96. Let me give you some feedback on why I'm right. And I think, and then following conversion data along with it. Right. That's key. If you can plug that in with generative AI.
Yeah. And what
we live in such a weird world now. You can't have this conversation even 18 months ago, right? It was metaverse, and everybody was still like, I don't get the metaverse. This AI piece is for real, right? It is.
Yeah. And that, how this all kind of ties together, right? We always thought blurred lines, but now how are they blending? I learned about Visit from Profitero, actually. And one of Mike Black's, with Masterlock, I think was the brand where they first looked at, right? And I was like, wow, because, digital shelf metrics are quantitative and needed and important and help us tremendously. But to the point now, especially think about that in-store experience, what is the qualitative assessment of our specialty PDPs? And so what Visit is doing and hearing from share groups that people that have partnered with them and just kind of, learning more. Yes, so their Visit score, right? And depending on the audiences and the brand that you're looking at in the market, but now you can have a more objective conversation even internally, right? With your e-com team, your sales team, your brand team, of what does have the best potential to both connect with and convert the consumer based on that Visit score. And great, now, instead of waiting maybe for conversion rate data for the retailers that do give it to you, or just, for that once a year refresh, you can, put your PDP images into Visit, get the score, and then just iterate until you get to that, whatever score you're trying to get to, right, out of 100. And I think that iteration, again, getting, similar with Ask Profitero, but getting to that right answer faster, man. And then with Visit, well, now you have a way of quantifying your competitors to content. And you could put there and say, hey, in this category for us, just hypothetically here, if we're looking at toothpaste between us and one of our competitors, we're great at this retailer with our content, but this one needs some work. So now I may prioritize that. Or let's bring Gen AI into it. I'd be really curious, brands, if you can find a way, use your existing content, score it in a tool like Visit, and then create generative AI content with human in the loop, again, legal, IT, brand, etc., depending on your company. Create content with Gen AI. Compare and contrast. And I mean, that's an interesting one. And how is it scoring?
A lot of people don't do that though. It's like, what if it's better than what we have? But then you have to look at it from the standpoint of, you created the initial, and it can only work off of inputs that are there, right? And it can then re-swizzle and then get something better. It would be really interesting if you can plug in, you can hand it over what you've made, and you can plug in what all the top people are doing, including yourself, and doing right, and they can crunch it and then spit something else back out. And then you need a tool to test it, right?
Yep. Yeah. And well, I mean, and I think, from that standpoint, to a degree, Visit has benchmarks there. But even, as you're kind of saying, I talked about this when I was on this podcast about the digital shelf, right? It's that concept. Do you want to look good internally or externally, right? It's not about picking on the past or saying this content's no good. It's about optimizing the future, right? Like, I am not picking on whoever created this. But if the score says we have opportunities to get better for the consumer, which we are all, should be focused on, then great, let's work together and say, how do we optimize this, right? Like, how do we come together and optimize it, test it? Yeah. And then keep testing. Let's make sure we how often do we have to look at this? But I think, again, you want to look better internally or externally, again, it's about teamwork and trust, and that hopefully those conversations get easier if they're a struggle now.
Right. I mean, when that original content is created, you just assume people did the best they were able to do with the tools they had and the information they had, and therefore they can get an A+. That's
right.
It's just now, just like times change, customer profiles, customer preferences, everything changes. You just need to update, including using the tools that are available. And, there's still a lot of people kind of with their head in the sand with this AI thing, thinking it's probably just going to blow over, and they're not getting the experience they need now. Like you're saying, there's all these different things that we have on the legal side and the regulatory side, all these things we need to get in place and we need to test. But just as you're testing AI, you're testing the internal workings of, do you have an organization that will accept it and can handle it and will vet it out and knows how to do it safely? Like, your legal team has never dealt with this before. Now they're being forced to deal with it, which is great, because 2 years from now, when it's all over the place, you're gonna have one of the best legal teams when it comes to evaluating new AI tools and how it's integrated and what's safe and what's not and what do we use. Like, there's multiple parts of AI, and one part is how the tool itself is being used, and the other one is how comfortable your organization is using it. And
even the separation of AI versus generative AI, right? Like Visit is an AI tool. It's not a generative AI tool. Ask Profitero in this case right now is a closed beta generative AI. But even those differences, right? AI is generically is more trend, where generative is literally generating a thing. And I think that's where you really have to work closely, like if it's generating copy or images. And, and a lot of this, especially from a content perspective, maybe you're just revisiting your existing policies and procedures on content creation that maybe haven't been looked at in a bit. And yes, there's some, complexity obviously with Gen AI, but I think when you look at this, it is having those, distinct conversations of what's the same, what's different, and then how do you balance? Because, even as we're talking about the prompts to a degree, but all this with generative AI, let's just talk specifically, you're going to have one group or a group that's going to say, well, tell me what I can't do. I don't want to put something in there that I shouldn't, or how do I even start? And that's great. Like, let me give you some pointers. And then you have the other group that's already been through 12 tools testing on their own. But like, how do you make sure it's not going too far with risk? But how do you how do you bring, those two, let's just say, extremes, and extremes are the wrong word, but how do you bring them together so holistically for the organization, we have the pace that we would want to be at from a generative AI perspective, yet with the appropriate amount of caution and risk mitigation that we should have with really anything, but especially Gen AI. That's the fun part. But I think it's going to be multiple people in your organization, right? This is not a 1 or 2 person task, right? This has to truly be a team, cross department effort. And it has to be hands-on in this case. There's definitely more, theory and things you can look at, but to truly understand it, dive in, because you'll see lists every day. Try this tool. Here's 100 tools that are great. And some are really good and some are not, or some are just that, they don't have the right terms of service for your particular level of comfort at your company, or it's too expensive. But unless you're trying them, it's just a list. Go and try, with commission and everything. Every company is going to be different on how they look at this. Make sure you're going in responsibly as you test this. But I mean, this is a time where it's hands-on learning, I think.
Yeah, I've been picking your brain for a while now. Any questions for me? Anything that's like top of mind? More than happy to share on my side.
I guess just from your perspective, we're in, been through a little bit here, or in the middle of earnings season. Both retailer brands overall. Like, any thoughts on just from your perspective on how earnings calls have gone from a digital lens, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's encouraging. I really think it's encouraging to start seeing some questions pop up more around the digital space, digital shelf. Retail media spend. I mean, the brand conversations I'm having, retail media is coming up all the time. The podcast episode just before this one with Sky around retail media incrementality and how you look at it, and the fact that a lot of it's subjective. But yet there's, so much money being spent there. When those questions start showing up on earnings calls, I think that's encouraging. I think it is. And, a lot of conversations with people around that right now is, what does it look like? But then fast forwarding, a year or 2 years, as these executives get, more knowledgeable around how much money's being spent there, how it's being spent, the implications behind it. I mean, if somebody had a multi-touch attribution tool, it'd be $1 billion company. I say that all the time, overnight. But they have to be comfortable first with the fact that it's not all dead on. It is subjective, but it's driving growth. And there's a lot of spend. Retailers want it from brands. Brands are ponying it up right now. And so, it's interesting to see that that's popped up a ton.
Okay. One other, just more, maybe not a question, but to thank you again. I know you have a lot of great guests, but, personally, I think, when you had, Chris and Oscar on from First Mover a little while back.
Awesome. All right. I got to have them back.
Yeah, no. And I encourage people, we talked a lot about content and Gen AI and fun stuff like this. They did a webinar back, one of their First Mover webinars. I think it was May 5th. I think it was 5/5 off the top of my head, but really in depth on this, right? And Oscar really talks about the implications. Like, I think that's a great one. I know you love sharing information, so personally, I recommend that one. And then not too long ago, you had Declan on from DCG.
Yeah.
And that space about, in essence, benchmarking, comparing from a digital commerce lens, right? I think there's a lot of providers out there that look at it and say digital, but it's really digital marketing. I think, personally, again, what DCG is doing here from a digital commerce perspective in a short amount of time, and some of the posts that he's putting out and others from his team, Declan, really incredible. And that conversation was really, illuminating. And if people haven't checked that one out, go back a few weeks and check out, Declan from DCG.
And we're actually going to launch a massive paid media survey with Declan. There's so many brands in the network. How can we get a whole, a benchmarking survey done around, I think probably start off Amazon paid media spend and have, I don't know, hundreds of brands, participate in it so we can get a holistic view, because that's another one. How much should we be spending? Where should we be spending? And I think we'll just tackle a bunch over next year. I really like what Declan's doing. And yeah, that was a great episode as well.
Yeah, and it has been an episode, but we've talked a lot of PDP content, but if you look at like owned content, your blogs and your website, your direct to consumer type website stuff, Notch with a K, right? Notch with a K, and what Anda is doing over there and team, Andrew Bolton and others, David Brown, like that is a really interesting one. I worked with them when I was at Simple Mills, but Notch is really interesting at scoring and looking at how the audience is responding to your owned content, right? Not necessarily now PDPs, but from more of the digital marketing side. So, what one to share there to give back. I appreciate all.
100%. And I'll reach out. I mean, I'm thinking of 5 more episodes right now, starting with obviously with the Profitero one, but bringing Declan back, having Oscar and Chris Perry back, bringing the team from Notch on, probably somebody from McMac, Digital Shelf Institute. We've got a whole lineup. I mean, it's
DSI, fantastic. Like Lauren Lieback, Peter Crosby, what they're doing there, putting out reports for people. We're all, as you are doing, right, trying to help figure this all out together, right?
That's right. That's all it is. It's just open networking, knowledge sharing. Great brands and great people like you, Todd, and just really appreciate you and your openness to giving back, because there's a lot of new people that are just, getting into digital, and they're a little apprehensive at this point in time because there's been so many advancements. How do you even catch up? Right. And that's kind of the purpose of this podcast as a whole, is just to build out this library. You can go back and look at everything from drop shipping and digital age 3PLs like Corey over at DaVinci, to blog posts, owned content, if we have the team from Notch on, to generative AI. Like I've only missed a few weeks over the past year and a half. Just usually when I'm out at this family vacation, which has been this August, we kind of pared it down to every other week, but, July, I should say. But now, going forward, it's just, there's so much content out there. But awesome, my friend. Well, thanks again. With that, I think we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks, Todd. You're awesome. Thanks, everyone, for listening in.